Hey guys, it's been a while. I thought I'd be a little festive and do a Halloween themed filter, but let's see how long I can tolerate it. So I'm gonna start off today's Q&A with a couple questions. So let's get started. Does Plan B hurt fertility later on? So it's hard to say because there's not a lot of research done on Plan B in general. But what I can talk about is the stuff that I know and the research that is available today. So if you're someone that's thinking about taking it or has taken it and has it in like their regular routine, I highly encourage you to go to the FDA's website as well as read the insert that comes with the medication. You're gonna find a lot of stuff. But that said, I guess I can talk about a little bit about the way that it works. So it's a huge dose of synthetic hormones, both estrogen and both progestin, synthetic progesterone. So first, synthetic hormones are actually pretty harmful to us. They can cause a lot of issues, and they're just not at all the same as our own hormones. So that's number one. Number two is it's basically like taking 4 or 5 dozen birth control pills all at once. So if you know what the birth control pill does, it shuts down our reproductive system. And taking a pill that acts, 1,000 to 2,000 times stronger than the birth control pill can raise a lot of flags because the birth control pill, one of the side effects is infertility. So I would imagine it could be the same I would imagine that there could be similar or worse things that could happen. The Plan B pill, it acts like a contraceptive, quote unquote, because it shuts down your reproductive system. So it's similar to the birth control pill. We've got that down. But it also sheds the uterine lining so much that it basically makes it impossible or close to impossible for a potentially fertilized egg to implant. So that said, it's a little bit more than a contraceptive, if you understand what I just said. So, that said, I'm not trying to play either side of any kind of political stance or anything, but it's really important to be informed. And honestly, that's one of the reasons my page exists, is because I believe so much in informed consent. So that's why a lot of the things you hear, not necessarily common things. So does Plan B hurt fertility later on? There's really no way to know because we're exposed to so many different things, but it's just another huge stressor that could be the catalyst for many other health problems. So, I do know women that have struggled to get their period back after the Plan B, or struggled to get ovulation back after Plan B. So it's really, kind of weigh the options for yourself and see if this is something that you want to continue keeping in your toolbox. So I hope that helps. Where can I buy liver? I'm having a hard time finding it. I live in the Denver metro area. So you're gonna wanna go to Western Daughters. It's a funny story. It's actually a butcher shop owned by an ex-vegan. So it's a vegan that became a butcher. Number one food for preggos. So I'm actually gonna do a post on this tomorrow, but I would say liver. It is the most nutrient dense, possibly the most nutrient dense thing you could eat. Okay, so yesterday my plans to do the Q&A kind of got thwarted by a couple things, but here I am to continue the conversation. Someone asked remedies for morning sickness. So there's a lot of theories about morning sickness and why it happens. I think I've talked about this before. So I'm really sorry. It can be pretty debilitating for some people. So hang in there. But some remedies, first and foremost is balancing your blood sugar. Depending on which stage of pregnancy you're either in an anabolic state or a catabolic state. So if, it's usually the anabolic state that people experience morning sickness the most because they're not supporting the increase in energy needs. So balancing blood sugar, making sure you're getting enough protein, carb, and fat at each meal, and finding the right, balance of macros for you and yourself, and meal frequency, etc. You can also do ginger or ginger tea. You can do bitters formulated for pregnancy. You can do lemon water. You can do milk as well, because milk contains protein, carbon, fat. It contains a lot of, well, raw milk specifically, contains a lot of enzymes that help with digestion. It also contains a lot of minerals and vitamins, like B vitamins, which could also be why you may be experiencing nausea. So those are a couple of really broad stroke options for you, and for you to try out and see what might work for you. So hope that helps. Is it possible for my thyroid to be whacked even though my TSH comes back in range? So totally. TSH is only one of several markers that actually give us a clear picture of what's going on with your thyroid. Most doctors that only test for TSH are just really unfamiliar with the way the thyroid works. TSH is not a good marker for thyroid function. You need to be looking at the full picture, like free T4, free T3, antibodies, what else? My brain is not working today. But you want to get a full thyroid panel to really understand what's happening, because there's several ways to interpret the thyroid test results, and TSH is only one small, teeny weeny part of it. What's your favorite folate brand for someone who is looking to conceive soon? So I generally actually don't like taking one-off supplements like that. I prefer to help my clients get their nutrients through food. Folate is not something that should be supplemented lightly, just like anything that you supplement in isolation, because anything you do that with has the potential to create deficiencies or other problems. I recently did a post about folate, and you need to make sure that you have adequate zinc, and so that doesn't mean go supplement that either. And you also need to be careful, because if you're deficient in other vitamins like B12, it can actually work worse and not in your favor, supplementing folate. So it needs to be done in a smart way, very carefully and thoughtfully. Everyone is so hot on folate because it's so well known to prevent neural tube defects, but I could easily name at least 3 other vitamins and minerals that could cause neural tube defects if deficient in them. So it's really about looking at the bigger picture here. But that said, I will be teaching exactly how to make sure you're getting enough folate in your diet in the course that's coming out with the preconception PT. So stay tuned for that. And I'll also be talking about brands that you can use if that's something that you wanted to pursue. So more to come there. Finally, coming off birth control after 10 years, any suggestion for easing this transition? So congratulations, that's gonna be huge. So that's a really loaded question too, though, to be honest. So one thing I would do is probably start nourishing myself properly, because, it's not to say you're not, but the birth control pill depletes so many minerals and vitamins, and you've been taking it for so long that you're probably depleted in a lot of things. I think I have a post on this that I did recently about exactly which ones are depleted. So you really want to focus on replenishing those to really try to ease the sort of transition, because that's going to be really important to get your liver back up online, because your liver has taken quite a hit for 10 years. So I'd start there. I would also try to reduce as many stressors as possible. So this means like exercise stress, make sure you're going to be taking it easy for a little while, allowing your body to really heal and work efficiently, prioritizing sleep, that's going to be huge, prioritizing sun and making sure you're getting outside, self-care, making sure you're doing something for yourself each week, at least once every week, maybe flexing that creative muscle to really flex the other side of our brain that we don't get to use very often. Lowering stress as well could mean like swapping to cleaner home products, swapping to less toxic beauty products, personal care products like shampoos, face washes, that stuff, to really just unburden the liver as much as possible. I would also consider working with a practitioner that is experienced in helping women get off their hormonal birth control pill, and even like also a doctor that's experienced in doing that, because what happens after is very much a black box. Some women have a really easy transition, like they have a really easy transition and it's fine, and as long as they address, you know, the nutrition part, the stress part, it can be a pretty easy transition. Some women have really immediate symptoms that occur due to the drop-off of birth control. The true state of the system actually starts to show, and so you can develop other things that have been suppressed can kind of come back, or show their faces for the first time. So you kind of have to be prepared to potentially deal with a new problem that you didn't have before. Also, and even if you do have a smooth transition and you haven't like necessarily prepared, most women that have that transition oftentimes experience issues a couple years later, like hypothyroidism, for example. I've seen this in several people that I know that have had smooth transitions, quote unquote, but didn't address or prepare to come off, or they have like definitive estrogen dominance, and are dealing with the issues now, and like cystic acne. So it shows up at different times depending on like the person. And it's important to work with someone, I think, because another really important reason to work with a practitioner is if you're planning on something like conception soon after, because there's definitely like a healing period that needs to happen, and also like specific supplementation that needs to happen to really prepare your body and prime it for conception. So those are a couple things I'd think about. I would try to lower stress again and really focus on nutrient-dense foods. Those are the top two things that I would focus on. And yeah, so good luck. Also, I'm not sure if you heard the trains, or if you can hear the trains in the back. I'm moving soon and I cannot wait to get away from these trains. Oh my God. And also, if you're wondering what I was eating, unreal for sure. Does spironolactone hurt ovulation? I know it's not recommended, but so I did a post on spironolactone a long time ago. So I'd actually scroll back through my posts. But basically, spironolactone is originally a blood pressure medication. So it's a potassium-sparing medication. It's a diuretic, and it competes with a stress hormone called aldosterone, which I've also talked about in my salt post. So like, do not avoid salt, that post. So aldosterone works by retaining sodium and excreting potassium. Spironolactone works by retaining potassium and excreting sodium. The problem with this is that it kind of like shuts down our natural stress hormones. So when we're stressed, one of the first thing to happen, this part of the stress process inherently is a release of aldosterone to retain sodium and excrete potassium. So usually aldosterone is high because when we're stressed, we usually lose minerals like sodium. So one of the problems with spironolactone is that it's lowering an already low mineral. So it's not actually solving anything. It's just kind of creating additional dysfunction on top of the stress that we're already experiencing. Yes, it does have the added benefit that it blocks androgen receptors from filling in, or blocks androgen receptors. So really, it's kind of making our stress worse and causing us to lose even more minerals than before, leaving us in a super minerally depleted state. So it's really important to understand that like symptoms of aldosterone being high are not the cause of your problems, but rather a symptom, not the cause. So like, it's important to get back to why your aldosterone is high. Why is it high in the first place? We're stressed. And so it's really important to go back and figure out why this, why that, to then address the actual root cause of your stress, because that is what's going to take care of whatever you're wanting to use spironolactone for. If our androgens are high, usually that's stress. When we're stressed, we have excess estrogen. Excess estrogen can be converted into testosterone. You guys, my phone died. I'm like the queen of this if you've seen my lives before. This has happened before. Getting back to it. So when we're stressed, our adrenals can pump out additional testosterone. When we're stressed, we are also pretty insulin resistant because free fatty acids are being liberated from our tissues and blocking our cell's ability to get glucose into the cell. So we become hyperinsulinemic, and this can also shut down sex hormone binding globulin, which keeps excess hormones in check. So really, it's it's kind of compounding. So we have to get to the root of stress, and it can often be mineral deficiency or just general like fight or flight. There are so many things that can cause us to be in a stress state. I've actually done a post on this too. Check it out. But it's important to get back to the why, because if we use this symptom suppressing medication, it's not actually solving anything. Medications don't do that. They just suppress symptoms. They don't actually cure anything. So, when we do that and allow the problem to fester when we stop taking it, or even if we're on it, just like long term, our problem can get worse and advance and grow into a bigger problem. So I'm a really big proponent of getting down to the root cause of things, and just supporting the body overall into doing that, because the body is the innate healer. So the body's probably missing a tool that it needs. So those are just my thoughts. I would highly recommend reading my post. There's more information on what spironolactone does, things to consider, but this is a great start, hopefully, for you. I almost forgot to answer your question. Does it impact ovulation? Everyone's gonna have a different reaction on spironolactone, so I can't say if it will or won't. But if you think about the way that it works on the body, it puts us in a more deeply stressed state for longer. I would imagine that it can impact your cycle, and it can impact your ovulation. So whether it does for you, that's to be said, but it's possible. Someone is trying to sell me plexus, claiming that it will fix all of my fertility problems. Thoughts? I would say run the other way. PCOS causes weight gain, or heavy weight causes PCOS? So PCOS can cause weight gain, is what I would say. Weight gain is usually a symptom or a sign of underlying dysfunction in the body. It's never really like my weight caused my issues. It's usually the issues caused my weight, and that's like universal with most issues, not just PCOS. But I will say that I know several thin and lean women that have PCOS, and they're struggling with these issues just like any other woman with PCOS. PCOS doesn't look the same on everybody. So I would potentially look into what your stressors might be, your blood sugar balance, and really try to get to the root cause and to alleviate your PCOS. And sometimes in the healing process, we also have to gain a little weight, and that's okay. I just wanted to differentiate that there's, weight gain because of dysfunction in the body, but also there's good weight that you can put on as part of healing your metabolism, healing your issues, hormonal issues and things like that. And this might be what happens for you, but also there's weight loss that can happen in the healing process too. So good luck. Should I be taking a calcium supplement while pregnant? I can't tell you what to do, but if it were me, no. There's no reason for me to take a calcium supplement. Because the pregnant body becomes and counterbalances calcium. The ratio has shifted quite a bit over the past couple hundred years in our world. So we get significantly more calcium than magnesium, and this ratio is very important to keep in check. And taking calcium will completely throw this ratio off, and that's not good. Let alone a couple of other reasons why. So go check out that post and do some additional research for yourself. Make your own informed decision. How to heal from miscarriage and to move on to a healthy pregnancy. So first of all, I'm so sorry for your loss. I really feel for you. Number one, know that it's not your fault. That's super important. First and foremost too, like I think this is often overlooked, but make sure that, you know, and everyone handles this differently. It affects everyone differently. And everyone needs something different too. So don't shortchange going to someone to be able to grieve your loss too and overcome that. There's definitely some people need a longer grieving time, and you know, take as much time as you need to really absorb what happened and to feel good to move forward. So whatever that means for you, take whatever you need, take as much time as you need, because this will benefit not only you mentally moving forward, but also your partner and your future child as well. And you know, your partner will probably want to be and should be involved in this grieving process as well. Other things you could potentially do. One thing I should say before that, know that it's also very common, quite common. So you're not alone. There's a lot of resources out there and groups that you could probably reach out to as well for support. Another thing you could do is, you know, talk to your doctor, see what potentially could have happened. Sometimes they know, sometimes they don't, and that's okay. See if there's anything that they recommend addressing, but I would honestly, the first and foremost thing is mental and emotional stuff, because you want to take time to grieve. It's healthy to grieve, and also be in a good state moving forward so that you can welcome your future baby into the most healthy world possible. But you know, of course, there's other things you can do, like addressing nutrition and stuff like that. And maybe that's worth looking at, but one thing at a time, I would say, and I would work with probably your doctor and maybe a practitioner well-versed in fertility nutrition to kind of see if there's anything else that you can any gaps is what I'm trying to say. But again, you know, I'm super sorry for your loss. Know that these feelings are only temporary, and your body can heal. Your body was made for this. You know, it's probably easier coming from me to you, but I genuinely feel that the female body is super resilient. And so also, you know, being optimistic and having hope is super important as well. I'm rooting you on, so know that you have me at least in your corner. You know, so keep going. You'll get through this, and I wish you the best of luck, and I hope this helps. Doctor wants to give me copper and iron supplements, and I have high ferritin. What does that mean? So I would check out my post called "What Your Ferritin Levels Really Mean." That'd be a good place to start, because ferritin signifies pathophysiology, and if your ferritin is really high, there's likely something very, very wrong happening in your body. I don't know why on earth your doctor would want to give you iron supplements if your ferritin's super high, even if it does have copper. I would check out all of my iron posts, because there's really never any reason for iron supplementation ever. We only need 1 to 2 milligrams of iron every day. We have a very sophisticated iron recycling system, so it sounds like there's a lot of dysfunction going on. I would recommend getting a full Monty iron panel as well as a hair tissue mineral analysis to really see what's going on. I use the Nuvarring, am I harming myself skipping periods? So it's first important to understand how the Nuvarring works. It works exactly like the combined, I shouldn't say exactly, very similarly to the combined birth control pill, which means it has both synthetic estrogen and synthetic progesterone. The Nuvarring has an additional risk factor because instead of being processed by the liver, the estrogen, specifically the synthetic estrogen, I forget the exact name, but it goes straight into the bloodstream. So there's a super high or a much higher risk for blood clots than the birth control pill, which still has pretty, a risk of blood clots. And what's kind of sick is that the manufacturer concealed this fact when it was first trying to get FDA approved. So I think that's pretty effed up. So know that. In general, it does suppress ovulation. So ovulation is very important. I would say scroll through my page and look at the birth control related posts to understand why. And I'm going to be doing more posts on this too. But ovulation is super important. It's how we make progesterone, and progesterone's a really protective hormone. And skipping ovulation just opens it. Shutting down the connection between your brain and your ovaries is just not a good idea, especially if you want to conceive in the future. So I highly suggest going through my posts. Actually, there are some pretty good books called The Period Repair Manual by Dr. Laura Brighton, Beyond the Pill by Dr. Jolene Brighton. Those are two really, really great books I would recommend checking out, and make an informed decision to see if this is still something you want to take. How can one raise vitamin D naturally besides the sun? My midwife says mine is low. So I have a post on this. Check it out. It says hormone D deficiency, but it has that crossed out, hormone D, and vitamin D, and then it says magnesium deficiency instead. It's a little further back. It's teal colored, and so what we need to understand is that usually there's a vitamin D deficiency because there's a magnesium deficiency. Why? Because magnesium is required for every single step of hormone D synthesis and then conversion to active vitamin D. So that's really important to understand. It's also important to understand that what conventional medicine measures is just a storage form of vitamin D. So this is pretty much, this is just not the form of vitamin. It's not the form of vitamin D that is synonymous with like immune system function. It gets all the credit. There's 11 forms of vitamin D, and we only know what 2 of them do. And one of them is the storage form, and one of them is the active form. And the active form is what does all the amazing things. And so, there's magnesium, which is needed to create and activate it. But you also need, I think one really overlooked thing is retinol, so vitamin A, real vitamin A. And many people, especially pregnant women, aren't getting enough. And that's what actually activates vitamin D to do all the amazing immune boosting things. And so I would say, do more research, advocate for yourself, because if your midwife's trying to pressure you to take a vitamin D supplement, that's probably the last thing you want to do, because vitamin D supplements will suppress vitamin A from activating vitamin D. So vitamin A is what activates vitamin D. Vitamin D supplements suppress vitamin A from activating vitamin D. So it's literally just this useless storage form. And yes, taking vitamin D supplements might raise the storage form, which is what looks good on a test, but it's useless unless you actually know what your active vitamin D status is, because that is the one that's doing all of the amazing stuff. And this is what people fundamentally don't understand when they, because I talk about vitamin D a lot and people just don't quite understand. It's a very nuanced topic, very nuanced and very complicated. And if they don't fundamentally understand that vitamin D supplements prevent vitamin D from being activated, they're not going to understand anything else. So that's the number one thing to understand. So how to raise vitamin D levels? Well, if your midwife is looking at storage D, it's going to be not so helpful. But if you still want to work on your vitamin D status, make sure you're getting sun, which you're probably already getting enough of. Make sure you're getting enough magnesium. Make sure you're getting enough retinol so that you can activate vitamin D and make it useful and help you instead of just sitting there. I would also check out my other posts. I did actually a series. It's one of the first series I did when I first started my Instagram account, and it goes through all of the things you pretty much need to know about vitamin D. I've been talking lately about more nuanced things about vitamin D, but this is like a really good basic thing. It's like a yellow and orange series. So go check that out. And I mean, you can't also discount food. That's a good source. So good food sources are pastured egg yolks, liver, grass-fed butter, dairy products like milk, goat's milk. Just make sure they're grass-fed. You could do wild-caught oily fish like mackerel, salmon, sardines, herring, wild-caught tuna. Those are really good food sources and will get you some vitamin D. Go check those out. I would also, probably research vitamin D because you're probably going to be pressured to give your baby vitamin D drops, and that's just not necessary because Mother Nature does not include vitamin D in breast milk, nor does it include iron. So do some research as well. I would recommend that. And, the reason I talk about vitamin D so much is because I'm really all about informed consent. I have been burned by conventional medicine so much, and it's just like something that I feel really strongly and want to empower people with. So I take everything that I talk about pretty seriously, and I've researched it pretty thoroughly, and it's mostly to help people and help keep themselves healthy, because I've taken vitamin D myself, and I've seen the ramifications of people taking vitamin D as well, long term, short term. It really affects them. I could see it on their labs. I could see it in the way they feel, their symptoms. So it's it's not such an innocent little thing to take. So hope that helps and gives you some food for thought. All right, guys, that's all I have time for today, but there will be another Q&A next week, so stay posted for that. Otherwise, thanks for joining me, and thanks for submitting such amazing questions. If I didn't get to it, stay tuned for next week, and hopefully I'll get to answer it then.